Hey, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Sports Mile podcast with your host, Dominick. And for the second episode in a row, I'd like to welcome back my best friend and guest, Alex Lustig, to the show as we talk about all things NBA Finals and NBA offseason chatter going around the league. Alex, welcome back to the show. How are we doing once again this week?
This is consecutive now. We're gonna get on a roll here. We're gonna be Colin Coward at some point.
Man, it's always good talking about sports with you. You know, we finished up the third episode of the Sports Wild podcast just a couple days ago, talking about the MLB All-Star Game, Home Run Derby, and the first half of the MLB season. And that podcast went off, of course, without a hitch. And hopefully fans, you guys tuned into that one. But today, as mentioned, NBA Finals talk is what we're going to start off with before getting into the off-season chatter, free agents, and we're even going to dive into what went on with the Los Angeles Lakers this year, as myself and Alex are both SoCal kids, LA Laker fans, and we'll dive into that in just a little bit here in the show. But the number one story going on, and as we record this podcast now, Game 4 of the NBA Finals just wrapped up. The Milwaukee Bucks against the Phoenix Suns, and Milwaukee evens up the series 2 games apiece with a 109-103 victory. What a game, what a series. I know viewership has been down this season on the NBA Finals in comparison to years past, but Phoenix takes game 1 and 2 at home in the Valley. Milwaukee back home takes games 3 and 4. Alex, just to start it off, what are you taking from this series through the first 4 games?
Well, I mean, first of all, we got to give kudos to Chris Paul, who's had an astounding career up to this point. I mean, every team he's played on has made it to the playoffs in some caliber, from his starting days with the Hornets, who are now the Pelicans, through the Clippers years with the Clippers, and then a couple years with Houston. I mean, this guy's literally worked his derriere off day and night, and he didn't do it in the more traditional way, which is now building a super team. Trying to get everyone in the NBA to that one team and be go like 82-0 pretty much. He did it in a non-traditional way. I think he deserves some major kudos, obviously, except for the game he had tonight. But I mean, he's been astounding. But talking about tonight, I mean, he literally built a house one brick at a time. He couldn't hit a shot, only 10 points. Devin Booker dropping 42, playing his heart and soul out. Phoenix didn't use the bench much. I thought they would have done more so of that. Milwaukee on the other end, Chris Middleton, 40 points. Antetokounmpo, 26 points. They didn't use a lot of their bench either. Also, interesting fact, all the Antetokounmpo brothers have been in the finals, which is an interesting fact. If you think the Lakers got one of them, they won a finals last year. So that means that the Bucks win this year, all 3 of them will have a ring.
Yeah, Kostas with the Lakers in 2020 when they defeated the Miami Heat, and then Giannis right now with Milwaukee if they can win 2 more games and complete the NBA Finals, as well as Thanasis, who's on the bench in the Milwaukee Bucks. So 3 brothers in the NBA getting rings potentially within 365 days of each other, if not more or less, depending on the numbers. But Game 4 of the NBA Finals, Milwaukee Phoenix. We already knew going into Game 3 a couple nights ago, Milwaukee needed to take both games on their home court in order to make this a series. Either way, Phoenix was up 2-0. If they left Milwaukee, they would have, could have, should have been swept 4-0. Or if they only win 1, they got to go back to Phoenix down 3-1. And right now, Phoenix is an incredibly tough place to play. So 2 good wins. Giannis Antetokounmpo, again, double machine, big body in the middle of the paint, and Milwaukee just gets it done. But tonight, as you mentioned, 40 points for Chris Middleton. He was the key in this game, and in my opinion, he's been kind of the secret weapon of the Milwaukee Bucks all playoffs long. Giannis missing the last 2 games against the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Middleton stepped up. Drew Holiday has stepped up, and even though both teams are not known for using their bench as much, tonight, the guy I want to talk about, Pat Connaughton, coming out with 11 points, 9 rebounds, 1 assist in 32 minutes of action. What a performance by Connaughton tonight. He had a couple clutch threes, especially one right at the beginning of the fourth quarter and one halfway through the fourth quarter that really kind of swung the pendulum of balance a little bit from Phoenix to Milwaukee. But now the series is even up 2 games apiece as they go back to Phoenix for Game 5 on Friday. And as you mentioned before, Chris Paul, undoubtedly he deserves to be there. He's put his heart and soul into his 16-year career. And he really, as you said, has not joined a super team. The closest thing to a super team that he had was Houston a couple of years ago when he teamed up with James Harden. And I wouldn't call Eric Gordon a number 3 guy on a trio super team, but that was probably the closest thing. Maybe if you want to consider Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan when he was on the Clippers, a super team, go on ahead if you're a Clippers fan. But here's some stats for you, Alex, that at least through the first 3 games, and then you can tally into tonight, that I found interesting. Devin Booker, 26 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists he's averaging as the number 1 guy for the Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul, 19 points, 3 rebounds, 8 assists, and that includes a dismal game 3 and a completely dismal game 4 tonight, so he needs to pick it up. And on the opposite side, Giannis, 29 points, 12 rebounds. He's that double-double factor. And coming off the bench, high energy, Milwaukee loves this guy. Bobby Portis, 8 points, 5 rebounds, and an assist off the bench. Just some key guys coming in for both teams in this series. So what is one thing Phoenix needs to do better in game 5 if they want to take control back in this series?
Well, first of all, I mean, let's not forget that tonight's game, like you mentioned at the beginning, was down to the wire, which the first 3 games we didn't really see because, the score was 20 points or higher at one point. It was just pretty much lopsided. I think what Phoenix needs to do is maybe use the bench a little bit more. Obviously, Chris Paul needs to get himself back into the game after having a couple rough outings. Jay Crowder, who is another veteran player, been in the finals 2 years straight now, last year with Miami and now with Phoenix. I think he's been a big help as well, but I think also Cameron Payne, who played 17 minutes, needs to do a little bit more as well. So I think there are some big guys that need to step up because it can't all be Booker. So I think in order for them to take advantage at home again, is they need to kind of step it up and figure out what did we do wrong these past 2 games that we can do better back at home.
I agree. I think if Chris Paul, again, first 2 games, great. The last 2 games, not so great. If he has another below average game, of course, I think Cameron Payne has to step up off the bench and be that point guard that really sets the tone for this offense. We already know what Devin Booker is going to bring to the table. He's going to shoot the lights out of the place. He's got the Mamba mentality. Kobe was his mentor, and he's going to bring that every game. But you need someone as that 1-2 punch with him to keep them in the game. I think what Phoenix can't do in game 5 and potentially the rest of the series, and it's going to be extremely tough, and it may take 2, maybe 3 guys to do it. You have to find some way to get Giannis Antetokounmpo out of the paint. When he is in the paint, he is too dominant for this Phoenix team. You want to push him out to the perimeter and force him to shoot those long jump shots, 18+ foot jump shots, and even force him into some unwilling 3-point shots. Because if he has his way, if you're giving him way too much space at the top of the key to do work, and truthfully, who's defending him? Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton. I don't really know who else can defend Giannis at that point. You're not going to put Chris Paul on him. You're not going to put Devin Booker. Maybe Torrey Craig if he comes in, but he only has about 12 to 15 minutes a night. So defending Giannis is, of course, I think anybody who's playing Milwaukee, that's rule number 1 when you face an MVP caliber player in Giannis Antetokounmpo. The other thing, I think on the Milwaukee side of things, Milwaukee cannot be absent-minded. You see sometimes in the first half and a little bit, there's in small spurts, they get very absent-minded on the court and leave too many guys open. They're not coming off screens properly and making their switches as crisp or on time as they need to be. So I think they need to, tighten up the screws a little bit and also stop relying on the threes. You have a team that can drive and go in and get some layups and get some and 1 fouls. Chris Middleton, Giannis, even Drew Holiday, almost everybody on Milwaukee can drive and go to the rack. I think they need to do that on a more consistent basis because you saw early on in the first quarter, they were 1 for 9 shooting 3. And I think at the end of the day, when all said and done, they ended up going 7 for 29 from 3-point range. That is not good numbers, not high percentages. So I think that's something they need to clean up. going into game 5 in a tough place in Phoenix. Now, as we see, game 1 and 2 in Phoenix, Phoenix wins. Game 3 and 4 in Milwaukee, Milwaukee wins. Does home court advantage in the NBA Finals mean more to a team than any other home field advantage in any other sport? Alex, what do you think?
I think obviously there's the anomaly of Cleveland coming back from 3-1. I think that's the only anomaly. But I mean, we've seen it a dozen times where teams have gone 0-2 at home and then have come back on the road, or vice versa, 2-0 at home and then have lost the 2 consecutive on the road. When we went into game 3, we were talking about this the other day. This could have been the end of it tonight. It would have been like, okay, so what do we talk about now? But I do think it just depends on the team. It depends on, now that they're allowing fans back in, I think it depends on, first of all, the team. Obviously, home court's a big thing too, but the adversity of having the fans in the stadium and how well the big name players show up. I think those are the big 3.
And the funny thing is, the biggest and only truthful compromise to this question is 1 year ago. We were in the COVID pandemic. There were no fans in the stands when they were in the bubble in Florida. And it was the Lakers against the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. And you could backtrack it a little bit more to the conference finals and the quarterfinals and any of the play-in tournament games last year in Florida. Lakers won in 6. Now, would the series been the same if it was at Staples Center, in LA, and in Miami? We're never going to know that answer. I feel, at least through all major sports, NBA, MLB, NHL, and somewhat in the NFL, because we know the Super Bowl is always in a neutral location unless you're Tom Brady with Tampa Bay and you end up playing in your home field for the most recent Super Bowl. But I feel NBA in the home court advantage talk is a little more favored in that conversation because, yes, it does have something to do with the fans. I think in any sport it has something to do with the fans, but we see it more often, I think, than in most sports, that someone could be down 2-0 or up 2-0 and then falter or find that chemistry and magic on their home court. Through the first 2 games, Milwaukee just looked flat. They lost by 10 plus points each game. They looked flat. They come back, they have a boost of energy from the crowd, and somehow they got their head screwed on straight. And guess what? 4 days later, they're leaving on a flight back to the Valley in Phoenix, and the series is all knotted up to 2. I think there could be a statement made for any sport about home field advantage, home court advantage, but I think it is something more special in the NBA than any other sport. Now, game 5, previewing that, who has to have the biggest game? And what are your predictions for what will happen just in game 5?
It could go either way. I mean, so far the home teams are both undefeated, so I could see this going to a 7-game series and ending up back in Phoenix again. I think that's where it's going to end up if they go 7 games, if I'm not mistaken. So I could see that happening. But like I said, Chris Paul has to step up. Obviously, we both mentioned he did not have the best past 2 games, so he needs to kind of figure out where can I improve on the court. He has Ozzy, out of all the players right now besides LeBron, he has an IQ of no other. Like, he knows the court so well. He knows how to direct traffic. Like, I'll give you an example, which we saw in LA and we've seen throughout our careers, is Ray Rondo. Same type of guy. He knows the court so well. He knows the play so well that he can tell a player to cut. He'll cut. One guy will go around back door, and it just works out perfectly. So Chris Paul needs to figure out how to work his magic. I know Booker's probably gonna have another big game as well. So Phoenix just kind of needs to review the tape a little bit and say, what did we not do right that we need to do better back at home?
Yeah, I think especially for being the home team in game 5 and losing the momentum over the last 2 games, Phoenix is going to be on their heels a little bit, at least right now. Right now, Milwaukee's riding the entire momentum of this series. And essentially now it's a brand new game. It's really a best of 3 series at this point. Now, whenever you go to a game 5 and when a series is tied up 2 games apiece or 1 game apiece, it's always that next game. Is this game, quote unquote, the pendulum swinger? Is it whoever wins game 5, that's who's winning the series? Or if you lose game 5, you make it up in game 6 and somehow rally back and win it in game 7. That's always different, I think, per team. And we've seen it now that Milwaukee has had those comeback wins, down 2-0, come back and win. They had a tough playoff series early on against the Brooklyn Nets where they won a full 7 games, and they had to go 6 games with Atlanta. So they've gone deep in series before. And Phoenix, I feel, earned their right to be in the NBA Finals. They knocked out the Lakers. They knocked out Denver in a heartbeat. And then they knocked out the Clippers. There was a little fight, but they still knocked out the Clippers. But I feel Milwaukee's been through the ringer a little extra than Phoenix has this postseason. So I'm actually going to say Milwaukee is more on the hot seat in game 5, which some people might disagree with or think it's a hot take, because I think for them to actually get in front of a series might actually do them some good. Now, it could do the complete opposite and throw their mind scheme off because they're already been in catch-up mode and rally mode, and that just galvanizes their team the best. But I agree, Chris Paul has to deliver in game 5 the most. And on Milwaukee side, I'm actually going to say Drew Holiday has to step up the most. We already know Antetokounmpo and Middleton are going to step up. They're the two-headed dog right there in Milwaukee. But Drew Holiday, 43 minutes, 13.7 rebounds, 7 assists in game 4. What scares me the most, he was 4 for 20 shooting. Bad percentages. He didn't have the best high percentage shots that he could have. He missed a couple of easy layups and a couple of short jump shots. If he sinks those, the game is completely different. He's going to rebound. He's going to assist. If he can become that third guy for Milwaukee, I think that makes them even more unstoppable than they already are. So yes, Chris Paul, but I'm going to go to the point guard on the other side as well. Drew Holiday has to step up. Now, final thing on the NBA Finals. Who raises the trophy at the end of the day and who gets to celebrate this offseason?
That's tough because if you think about it, Phoenix has never won. And the last time Milwaukee won was before the NBA-ABA merger. So it's been some time. So you think about it, the 4 teams that were in the conference finals have never been in the finals since the NBA-ABA merger in the late 70s, early 80s. So Phoenix has appeared in the finals before, obviously early 2000s, back in the Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire days. So for them to be able to finally raise a trophy, I think that I think it'd be good for either one, but I think Phoenix probably deserves it a little bit more just because they worked so hard, they've come so far, and just finally see Chris Paul get a ring, and I think that will absolutely cap off his NBA career, and he's already cemented a legendary career in getting himself into the NBA Hall of Fame. So I think this will just add a bit more to that and say, look, this guy worked his derriere off without building a super team, any of that. He definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, and no lie, Phoenix Suns head coach Monty Williams, he got Coach of the Year, deservedly so. He and the front office of the Phoenix Suns single-handedly put this team back on the map. They've had Devin Booker, they've had DeAndre Ayton, and they brought in Chris Paul, and this is why they brought Chris Paul in, to not only elevate the play of this organization, but get them essentially to the promised land. And they're technically 2 games away from the promised land. And they've thrown in Jay Crowder, and Bridges has been a nice piece to the puzzle for them as well, and a smothering of other pieces on the bench as well. Chris Paul, after 16 years, does deserve a ring, and I hope it happens. And I'm on the fence with this because I can see why I want Phoenix to win, but I also see why I want Milwaukee to win. I think this is Giannis's team. This is Giannis's time. And I know that sounds weird because Chris Paul, as you just mentioned, it's his time. He's worked his butt off to get to where he needs to be without forming a ginormous super team. But I think there's a lot of pressure, more so on Giannis's broad shoulders as the Greek freak, that everybody's put on him already. Oh, if he doesn't win a ring this year, is he a bust? Is he not the true MVP? The list goes on and on. I personally, it's more like a head and a heart decision. My heart says Phoenix for Chris Paul Devin Booker because of his relationship with Kobe Bryant. But my head says at the end of the day, with what I've seen in this postseason, for as strong as both these teams are, my head's saying Milwaukee Bucks. So I know that seems like, oh, you're riding the fence and you're just flipping a coin. I'm going to say 51% Milwaukee, 49% Phoenix, because it's been that good of a series. But I'm on the boat of, I don't care who wins. I want to be entertained. And through 4 games, I've been entertained. Game 4 tonight was very entertaining. If game 5 is like this and game 6, and who knows if we get back to game 7, this is going to be a series, I think, even though a lot of people aren't watching it, it's going to be an NBA Finals to remember, especially for both these teams and, of course, for the team that wins it at the end of the day. Now, circling back, let's backtrack through some history a little bit. About a month and a half, almost 2 months ago. And let's get to our team. SoCal, LA Lakers, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the whole crew. 42-30 season, 7th in the Western Conference. They had to go into the play-in tournament. They defeated the Golden State Warriors, so they locked in the 7th seed and ended up playing Phoenix in the first round. And clearly we know what happened because Phoenix is in the NBA Finals and LeBron James is currently promoting his movie. What happened to the Lakers this season, Alex, to say it nicely? Let's just say it nicely to cap it off. What happened?
Well, first thing was the injury bug. Obviously, LeBron, messed up his ankle and missed a good amount of time with that high ankle sprain. Anthony Davis missed some time with a groin injury as well as his Achilles injury. There are some guys that had to step up. Schroeder did decent. He wasn't my favorite. I don't think that the Lakers should keep him, if I'm going to be completely honest. I thought it was a good move at first, but he obviously couldn't prove himself. Kyle Kuzma, who's always been solid, has helped out. They had some guys who they picked up in the offseason who I thought were going to be good moves, but it's mostly the injury bug that just got to them. And they just couldn't stay healthy. So if they stayed healthy, I think they would have had a better shot. But that's kind of where we're at right now. It was just the injury bug has gotten to everyone.
Yeah, the injury bug was tough for the Lakers. I think they were one of a handful of teams in the NBA this season that were riddled with injuries, probably maybe not from day one, but through early on. And you do talk about the inconsistencies and the injuries, but let's look at the new additions that the Lakers had put in the offseason last year that were supposed to not rebuild this championship team, because they did lose Danny Green and Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee, who were 3 key parts to that 2020 NBA championship run. But these were some of the names that the Lakers either got in the offseason or picked up at the trade deadline. You had Montrezl Harrell, who at the time was the reigning 6th man of the year with the LA Clippers, Dennis Schroeder, Wes Matthews, and Marc Gasol, who was an NBA champion with the Toronto Raptors a couple seasons ago. Mid-season, when times were struggling and the injury bug had hit, they got Ben McLemore from the Houston Rockets. And I thought a guy that was really going to make his mark with this team and really potentially cement himself as, we're going to re-sign him, Andre Drummond. He was a beast with the Detroit Pistons. He was a beast for the Cleveland Cavaliers. His time with Cleveland did not go as well as many people had thought to be the big man, especially with multiple other centers like Jared Allen coming into the picture and essentially stealing his job. But there was something about this Laker team, excluding the injury bug for a minute. It just didn't mesh at the end of the day. You saw early on Montrezl Harrell was having a good season, but as you got to the dog days of February, March, and April and into the postseason, it just looked like head coach Frank Vogel did not know how to manage Montrezl Harrell's bench play or even starting play with the likes of Andre Drummond and Anthony Davis when he was healthy, and even Marc Gasol. So I think you saw all these pieces that were good on paper, but just didn't quite execute at the end of the day. Dennis Schroeder, who we thought, you and I thought were going to be good pieces to the puzzle at point guard. And at times it looked like it was a great move when LeBron was healthy, when Anthony Davis was healthy, Schroeder was healthy, and, Caldwell Pope and many other of the normal 5 starters were in the lineup. Schroeder looked like he had it going on. But late, when LeBron couldn't play, Schroeder collapsed and became a non-factor at that point. So the high inconsistencies with the Lakers did not work out well. The only part of the puzzle, I think, that the Lakers were, I don't want to say surprised about because we saw it early on in preseason, was the play of Horton Tucker. Talen Horton Tucker, who, yes, he only averaged 9 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists off the bench, but he was probably the one biggest bright spot for the Lakers all season long. He had at least the majority consistency throughout the season, and he had to step up in a big way because of the injuries that had accumulated for the Lakers this season. So what did you take from the play of Horton Tucker this season?
I mean, I think you pretty much nailed everything right on the head. They have a lot of work to do in this offseason, whether it's trade, sign some other guys who are free agents. I know we'll get into talking about that soon. They got to figure it out because they weren't all there. And now also the department of Jason Kidd, who is now going to Dallas, if I'm not mistaken.
Reuniting with Mark Cuban and the Mavericks, and he'll get a great player in Luka Doncic, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I mean, he obviously knows the system. He played for them. He won a ring with them, for crying out loud. So he knows the team well. He knows the system well. But I think I agree with you in the fact that Vogel just didn't know really how to manage his players later on in the year, especially with all the injuries. He was just kind of figuring out, okay, let's throw this guy in for a game and see how he does. And that obviously didn't work out. I mean, yeah, they were lucky to even sneak in as a 7th seed, which honestly I was shocked about. I didn't even think they would beat Golden State. I'm like, all right, if they beat Golden State, maybe there's a slim chance, but then we're gonna have to take on Phoenix in the first round. It's just so tough to judge because last year they looked phenomenal. They had Ray Rondo, they had a healthy Anthony Davis, they had a healthy LeBron James. Pretty much everyone was healthy, minus a couple things throughout the year. But this year they just looked. I don't even know what team I was watching.
To me, at times they looked basic, not a special team. They looked like any average team that had singular moments in a game that were highlight reels, but there was just not that consistent play. Now, sometimes I sat there and said, I wonder if they're falling into what I call the trap. And what I call the trap is, did they think we just came off a championship run? We're good. No one's going to care about it. We'll easily make it into the second round of the playoffs, and then we'll start carrying. Do you think the Lakers fell into the trap, or am I just overthinking it too much and they did have other issues besides that mindset?
I agree with you. They absolutely got lackadaisical at points. I agree with you. There were points where it looked like I was just watching a high school game, just learning the basic fundamentals. It's like, you guys are professional. You guys have, a lot of these guys are tenured, especially on the Lakers. You don't see a lot of rookies with them, but these, they just looked like they really were, oh, we won a championship. We're good. If we make it into the playoffs, fantastic. If not, it is what it is. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the injury bug didn't help as well. Not just with the Lakers, with every other team as well. I mean, you look at Antetokounmpo, he missed a couple games because of a hyperextended knee. You look at Trae Young, he rolled his foot on a referee and missed a couple games of that. Chris Paul, who missed a game because of COVID. There are all these injuries that were just so offsetting. You got another one too is Kawhi Leonard that now we just found out today he has an ACL tear and he's going under surgery for. There's all these injuries that if they were avoided, the season probably would have been completely different.
Now, and the biggest thing, speaking of injuries, and I'll bring this up briefly, I know LeBron got on his soapbox and was talking about, I knew this was going to happen. I knew the injuries were coming because we didn't have a proper offseason and so on and so forth. My only retort back to LeBron James's statement in that regard is injuries can happen at any point. And I know I'm not saying I'm an NBA caliber player who puts my body through the ringer, 365 days a year, and I'm mentally ready and so on and so forth, like these guys have to be. But injuries can happen anytime, anywhere. LeBron could get hurt vacationing somewhere and hurt his ankle and be out for 3 months to start the year. Who knows? I don't wish injury upon anybody. But to say that just because they didn't have an extra month or two off I don't know if I can completely correlate those two things. I get it because your body does need time to rehab itself. But I don't know if you can say every single injury that has happened, Trae Young, Kawhi Leonard, especially from these big name players in the NBA that are essentially faces of the NBA, is the reason, those two ideas correlate with each other. It's tough for me to think that way. And I know a lot of people may have other opinions about it. But to me, at the end of the day, injuries are injuries. It's going to happen if you are on the second of a back-to-back, near the end of a, game 80 of an 82 game season, or game one. You saw a couple years back, Gordon Hayward, when he was with the Celtics, first game of the year, there goes his ankle against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Anything can happen, practice court, on the court for a live game. It can happen anywhere, anytime. So it's always a tough thing. And yes, the Lakers got pinched with the injury bug. Every team goes through it at some point. But I think in a weird way, the key to the Lakers to improving for next season, get a slight bit younger. As you mentioned, I think they did get a little complacent this year. I think because you did have a lot of veterans on that team that said, I trust my stuff. I trust your stuff. We're all veterans. We got this. The young guys are going to have their time, but we're the veterans. We're wiser. We know what to do. And I think they just got lackadaisical, and it kind of bit them in the butt at the end of the day. So bringing in a little youth or a player that is hungry to win a championship, and this perfectly leads into our next conversation about some big names that are on the free agent board and potential trade market in the offseason, bringing in somebody who hasn't won a championship before, that lights a fire under the guys who even have won a championship before. So leaning into that conversation, let's take a look at the offseason this year. No, we're not there yet. The NBA Finals are still going on, but we already know who are some of the big name free agents and some on the potential trade market going on. I'll name a few. Alex, I know you have a few names on the free agent market that you think are huge names. So I'm going to pick some that are maybe to other people that follow the NBA that don't think are at the top of the list, but I think are going to be notables throughout the offseason. And my first two are via the trade market. We saw what happened with Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers in the second round of the playoffs. And recently we're hearing talks that Kristaps Porzingis of the Dallas Mavericks is not happy with his situation and may ask for a trade. So just those two guys on the board, Ben Simmons, Kristaps Porzingis, what do you make of their situations individually?
So start with Porzingis. I mean, you think about it, when he was with the Knicks, he wasn't happy there either. Got out, went to Dallas, thought he was going to be a big name. Luka Doncic comes in, shows he's, he was basically the heir to Nowitzki, and has now basically followed in his footsteps and said, I can take your spot and I can lead this team. So for him to be unhappy, I can understand why. If it's about the coaching change, or if he's not getting enough playing time, whatever it is, I feel like he's just one of those guys that's going to complain regardless. Even if he wins a ring, he's going to be like, yeah, I won a ring, but where was my help? I don't know where he's going to end up. That's kind of where I'm at right now, because if he's going to keep complaining, no one's going to want him. He can, I definitely agree with you. I think he'll definitely ask for a trade. I just don't know where he's going to end up. And then when we move to Ben Simmons, who can't shoot a three-pointer for the life of him, I think he got a bit of Kardashian curse at some point here. But yeah, he was not all there with Philadelphia in the second round of the playoffs. So it was all Embiid. He was doing pretty much everything. That's kind of tough to pinpoint where he's going to go. I could see him going to a team, I know the Cavs showed some interest in him earlier in the year and said, yeah, we might, consider a trade for him for like Kevin Love or something like that, who could be very much on the trade market as well, as a matter of fact. I mean, he can really end up anywhere, to be honest.
With Kristaps Porzingis and the Dallas Mavericks, I feel they have a good team on their hands. And I know, as you mentioned, head coach Rick Carlisle gone, Jason Kidd in. And for those who don't know, Rick Carlisle goes to the Indiana Pacers. He'll be with Brogdon and Sabonis now, which I think is a good duo in the NBA. But Porzingis, he had injuries this year. Let's be real for a little bit. He missed 30 plus games with injury. And for me, if you're coming off injury, you can't be 100% behind getting traded. you did what you had to do, but even in times when he had to be Luka Doncic's number 2, he still slipped back and was more of a 3 role. And you saw in the playoffs against the Clippers in the first round, Tim Hardaway Jr. had more of a number 2 impact more than Kristaps Porzingis did. Now, the Clippers did a great job of defending Porzingis, but Porzingis was a star in the Knicks, didn't like his situation. And at the time, the Knicks were the laughingstock of the NBA. Let's be real. Phil Jackson did not have a good stranglehold on that team. And he goes over to Dallas, and you think for a little while, he's going to be Luka Doncic's number 2, but it's just not working out. I feel Dallas may need to go in a different direction. They do need a big man, because I don't think Dwight Powell and Boban Marjanovic are going to be the future. They're good side pieces, but I don't think they're a legit centerman that can contend in this NBA season in stature that we're living in right now. My goal, I think, for Porzingis, stick it out, see what magic you can create with Doncic and Jason Kidd now as your head coach. Tim Hardaway, see if you can bring in another free agent, maybe like a Kyle Lowry, maybe a DeMar DeRozan. I don't know, somebody that can be in that backcourt with Doncic a little more, and just kind of ride the wave a little bit, because I think Dallas has a good team. They just got to take a beat, take a breath. You got Luka Doncic. You are in very, very good hands. Now, Ben Simmons, on the other hand, there's a lot to unravel with Ben Simmons. I never agreed with him being, a top 5 draft pick at the time. I know a lot of people were very high on him. I was never a believer in Ben Simmons. I know he can dish the ball out. He can give a good assist. He's got the body to rebound. It's the scoring, and sometimes it's the drive. I don't see him as a scorer. If it's not a layup, he doesn't want any part of it. You saw it in that series against the Atlanta Hawks. Open 3, now I'll give it to Joel Embiid, who's triple teamed. And he doesn't have the look or will to win, and I think that's going to be something tough. And with Doc Rivers as the head coach, and you hear stories about he's set in his ways, Ben Simmons, he's set in his ways, and he just wants to be a piece. He doesn't want to be a star. I don't know the truth and validity to that, but Ben Simmons, I do think, will stay in Philadelphia unless something drastic happens, because I think Doc Rivers doesn't want to be the person this part of his career that lets something go and another team finds some magic in Ben Simmons, and then all of a sudden Ben Simmons is averaging a double-double, 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists a night. He doesn't want to lose Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons, I think, does have the mold of a star in this game, but I question his drive and his will to win. So I think for both guys, they need to stick around where they are for at least one more season. Porzingis, I think, has a better shot of finding success with the team he's at now than Ben Simmons. Now, Alex, I'll turn it to you. Give me 2 big names that are going to be free agents that are going to be the talk of the town this offseason.
Well, we already talked about 3 of them kind of before we started the show. Kawhi Leonard is a big one. And then we have Damian Lillard as well. And I think Chris Paul. Those are probably the big 3 I would say that are going to be notables. We'll start with Chris Paul. I think he'll re-sign with Phoenix. I think they'll give him another shot, especially if they win the finals, or if they don't, regardless, I think they'll give him another shot. Instead of him bouncing around from one team to another for 1 year at a time. He was with Oklahoma City with a year, and then he's obviously with Phoenix for a year, and he's been, at a couple teams for about a year and then moves on to the next. I think he stays with Phoenix.
As an elder statesman in the game, and you can see his relationship with Monty Williams, I think Chris Paul may be set in Phoenix for the rest of his career, because if they win, great. If they don't, he and Devin Booker are going to put in extra work for redemption season next year. So yes, Chris Paul, Phoenix. Agreed. Continue.
Also you got to figure he was with Monty Williams too when he was in New Orleans. So they're closer than probably him and LeBron are together. The other one I mentioned is Damian Lillard, a guy who is not a big fan of Chauncey Billups, because during his interview when he got the head coaching position, all they asked him was about the scandal, all this stuff. He had wanted nothing to do with that, but from what I can see, he wants nothing to do with him either. So there's a lot of teams that are looking at him, the Lakers being one of them. I think Philadelphia is another one as well. I think LeBron's going to put his recruiting cap on and say, dude, come out here. You can have nice weather. You can chill with me and Anthony Davis. We can get you he's probably going to say, we can probably guarantee that you will get a title with us.
You know, I am all in on Damian Lillard, just as Damian Lillard. What he brings to the game right now in the NBA is easily top 5 material. I can sit down and watch Portland Trailblazer basketball with Damian Lillard in the starting 5 any day of the week. Would I love for him to come to the Lakers? Absolutely. I would welcome him with open arms. At the same time, that is going to be you thought Anthony Davis coming was going to be a huge haul when the Lakers gave up Lonzo, Ingram, Hart, and all the picks that went along with it. Damian Lillard is going to easily, if he has to come to the Lakers and they make that trade, it's going to be 3 to 4 current Laker roster players and at least 2 picks, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to predict any trades or dive really deep into numbers based on average value of money, but it would take probably somebody like a Kyle Kuzma, Caldwell Pope, Caruso, and Horton Tucker as those 4 players to get Damian Lillard. I know there's rumors about Carmelo Anthony and the Lakers wanting to pursue him. And I know Lillard and Carmelo Anthony had a good relationship in Portland the last year and a half. But Damian Lillard is an exceptional player. He can fit any roster. I don't care if he goes to the worst team in basketball. He's going to make that roster better. So Damian Lillard I think, is going to be the star of this NBA offseason and the biggest question mark because he's not a free agent. He's going to be a tradable piece. So Damian Lillard, keep your eyes on that. But now talk me through the Kawhi Leonard situation, because that's an interesting one as well, since just a couple of years ago, he and Paul George signed and battled the Lakers for who can make the biggest offseason move.
I agree. So funny story. So when Paul George got traded to the Clippers, I was actually in Las Vegas that day that he got traded. I actually saw him the same day he got traded. And 3 hours later, I'm like, wait, this guy just got traded. What the heck just happened? I think it was a mistake for Kawhi to leave Toronto, especially after he won a title with them. In my personal opinion, I know he won a couple of them with San Antonio as well. But it was a big curveball when he said, I'm coming home to LA. But at the same time, it was kind of, in the moment, it was just right as well. But I think it was still a huge mistake for him to leave Toronto. But, I mean, you look at Toronto, even the past couple seasons, they've had Van Vliet step up. They've had Lowry step up. They've had their fair share. But here's Kawhi's struggle. He's been with the Clippers now for a few years. They've lost in the same round every single year. And for some reason, it's just the Clipper curse. They just can't get to the finals for some odd reason. At first, they thought, oh, maybe if Doc Rivers leaves, maybe if we get a new head coach, Ty Lue, that he'll help us out and get us to the finals. It didn't happen. So I think there's some curse to the Clippers. I think I can see him staying there. But I feel like in the same way he's going to be like a Damian Lillard, he'll be a good piece anywhere.
Kawhi's story was very apropos, as they call it, coming home, being from Southern California, going to San Diego State. I get why he left Toronto. Now, he delivered Toronto's championship. So no matter where he was going, if he stayed or if he went, he'll always be treated like a god to our neighbors of the North in Canada. No doubt about it. And I agree with you 100% of the way. Kawhi Leonard can make the worst team in basketball even better. He's just one of those players that's the face of the NBA and is a dynamic shooter, a dynamic defender. You put all the adjectives there, that's Kawhi Leonard. Do I think he stays with the Clippers? I'm going to say yes for multiple reasons. One, I don't think he's going to dip on his hometown when he didn't even finish the season because of the knee injury. B, because of the knee injury, he's going to miss most at least half of the season next year. If not, let's see, we're in July now. Season starts October. He's probably not going to play until after the new year, January 1, 2022. That's just how it's going to be. So I don't see another team taking a chance and taking a lot of their salary cap on this guy who's going to miss half the season. So that's another reason why I see the Clippers being his number one choice. And the third reason I think he's going to be there is I think he knows in his mind, Paul George can't do it alone. And Paul George is going to be locked. He's locked in for a couple more seasons. He's not going anywhere. I think Ty Lue is a better coach than Doc Rivers for the Clippers and the style of play that they have. So that's on their side. And I know Kawhi and Ty Lue get along pretty well. Some other notable names that are going to be on the market that I jotted down a little bit. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball is going to be an interesting name because I know the Clippers might have some interest in him as they did in the trade deadline a couple months back. Jared Allen, centerman for the Cleveland Cavaliers, previously with the Brooklyn Nets. He had a very good season with Brooklyn, and he carried that over. Even after being on the back end of the bench for Cleveland when he started going over there, he took over for Andre Drummond when Drummond came to the Lakers. He'll be a big name to pop up. And also a guy that really had a quiet season due to injury. And unfortunately, he got traded to one of the worst teams in basketball, the Houston Rockets. Victor Oladipo. He was a name with the Indiana Pacers, and he's been riddled with injuries the last year and a half, 2+ years. I think he's going to make some noise this offseason. But looking into that, NBA Finals, what went wrong with the Lakers and kind of what is to come for the NBA offseason in the 2021-2022 season next year coming up. Let's get to one of my favorite segments of the show, if not the favorite segment of the show, the rapid fire finale. Now, it's not going to be as rapid fire tonight because I wanted to put a little meat on some of these questions instead of yes, no, maybe so, who knows. But 3 questions. Let's kick it off. It's going to be intense. It's going to be fun. But like I said, there's going to be some meat on this bone. So, get that T-bone steak and let's start chewing off some good pieces of sports information and basketball knowledge here. So question number 1 for you, Alex. Name me your starting 5 lineup plus 1 bench guy based on current NBA players.
Well, first off, I'm going to have to start with Steph Curry, the three-point god himself. I think he is definitely one of the best players out there in the NBA right now. Obviously, we're the past couple seasons with injuries, somehow managed to sneak into the playoffs this year and lost to the Lakers. He's my number 1. My number 2 is going to be LeBron for obvious reasons. Number 3, I'm going to have to – this is a bit of a curveball. I'm going to say Embiid is going to be the center here. He's proved himself. He is the process at this point, is what he says, trust the process. He pretty much is the process himself. I think he'd be a good fit with those. Number 4 is going to have to be, I'm going to say Carmelo. I think he's kind of gone under the radar a little bit since his NBA comeback. But he's a solid player, had fantastic years in Denver and with the Knicks as well. He's been doing pretty dang well in the state up north in Oregon with the Portland Trailblazers. So I think that's the number 4 right there. Capping it off for my starting 5, I'm going to have to go with Damian Lillard. I think that'd be my starting 5. And on the bench, that's where it gets tough because there's a lot of guys out there who are solid. I'm going to have to say either Chris Paul or Seth Curry.
Keeping the Curry boys together.
You think about it, I mean, they've had some historic bouts throughout their career. Not a lot of people know about Seth, unfortunately, but I think it's going to be between Chris Paul and Seth Curry on the bench.
Yeah, and Seth Curry did have a coming out party, in my opinion, this postseason with the Philadelphia 76ers when Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris was good, but not as dominant as he was in the regular season. Seth Curry, not Steph, Seth Curry stepped up big time for Philadelphia. So nice starting 5, nice bench piece. I dig it. So I'm going to verse you here a little bit. I know in our last podcast when we talked about all MLB All-Star Game and stuff, you and I were on pace a lot. We had a lot of similar thoughts on MVP, Cy Young, snubs, and all that good stuff. Out of my starting five and bench, we have one similarity, only one. So I'll start off with that. He's my point guard, and we've talked about him already in the show, Damian Lillard. He can drop you 50 points in a heartbeat, 10 plus assists in a heartbeat. He's shooting from half court, just like Steph Curry does with the Warriors. So Damian Lillard in my backcourt, and that's our only similarity. So this is going to be all new for the viewers. I'm putting Luka Doncic in my backcourt. You know, the guy, he's been playing professional basketball when he was back in Slovenia since he was 13 years old. Basically, he was playing in the NBA of Slovenia at 13, and the next youngest guy in Slovenia at the time was like 20 plus years old. He was a boy amongst men dominating the sport, comes over to Dallas, and he's taken the league by storm, bringing it to the front court when healthy. And of course, we're in a perfect world right now. Everybody's healthy and injuries don't exist. When healthy, Anthony Davis. He gives you size. He shoots layup, dunk, mid-range, three-point distance, dynamite 80+% free throw percentage. Anthony Davis is in the front court. Give me Kevin Durant as well in the front court. The shooting capabilities are off the charts. His defense, I feel, has stepped up, especially this year with the Brooklyn Nets, with absences with Kyrie Irving and James Harden. Give me Kevin Durant, the champ. And also to round out my starting five, he's currently in the NBA Finals. He is the Greek Freak. He is one of three brothers in the NBA. Give me some Giannis Antetokounmpo. I love the kid. He's dynamic in so many ways. His game is not 100% polished. I know he's still working on free throws and three-point range, but when this kid is on, He's an MVP already in his young career. He can get you a massive triple-double at any time, 30-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, 12-plus assists. Give me some Giannis. And off the bench, I know Laker fans might not like me with this pick, but I'm going to go with our arch rival, somebody from the Boston Celtics, somebody I wish, and I will hold this forever against this man, Magic Johnson. Why did you not take Jason Tatum with the number 2 pick instead of Lonzo Ball? Give me Jason Tatum. I know he's a starter with Boston, but he's a great shooter, great young talent. He is my bench piece. So my 5, Luka Doncic, Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and my bench player, Jason Tatum. Take that, Alex. Take it. I want those 5 or those 6 guys in a tournament. Let's find a way to all get them on social media. And I'm going to take you down on the backcourts right now. We're going to go down to the park and we're going to make it happen. All right. Second question in the rapid fire finale. This one's going to be a toughie because we're going to throw it back a little bit now to basketball's past. Which retired NBA basketball player do you wish you could bring back currently to their prime and put on a current NBA roster to make that team better?
I'm stuck between a couple guys. One was just recently retired, the dunk king himself, Vince Carter, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and of course, one name I'm sure you probably never would have thought of in a million years, Big Shot Bob, Robert Horry.
The 7-time champ, Big Shot Bob, buzzer beater against the Kings. I wasn't thinking him, but you have great reason to put him in there. So continue. Great reasoning.
So it's tough just to pick one. If I had to say Vince Carter, I mean, obviously, I'd love to see him with Toronto again. But if I had to put him on a current team now, I'd probably throw him with the Cavs just to see what he would do. I mean, obviously the Cavs haven't been good since LeBron left. They have a couple of big names there, but I feel like Vince Carter would be that guy that just the veteran himself. He would just be more of I think he'd make the team decent, but I don't think they'd be fantastic. I think he'd be more of just a show, the showman. Everyone would go to the game just to see him do a 360 windmill dunks in some amazing way from half court. Larry Bird, a fantastic guy with the Celtics and the Pacers. I would throw him. Man, that's tough. I'd throw him with Detroit.
Like I said, there's a lot of players you could bring out of retirement. A lot of people that played the game so well before we were even born, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. For me, it rattles off 2, maybe 3 guys come to mind right off the top of the bat. Shaq, the most dominant centerman I think the NBA has ever seen. It would be interesting to see where he would play nowadays with, kind of the softness of the NBA. You barely touch him, he's fouled, and his free throw shooting was not the greatest. So you better hope he dunks, and hopefully it's an and one and not 2 free throws at the dish. If I could put Shaq on any team but the Lakers currently right now, honestly, I'd put him on Dallas. To take Porzingis out of the mix for a minute and put Shaq, Doncic, Tim Hardaway Jr., and potentially another free agent this offseason, Shaq would be a great piece for Jason Kidd to coach with Dallas. Last but not least, I could always say Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, but Isaiah Thomas. He was a floor general. I know there's a lot of talk that him and Magic had, beefs going on during the, Olympic Dream Team and so much. But if you dive deep into the numbers, Isaiah Thomas was one of the best point guards we've ever seen. Him and John Stockton were probably just, put them on the Mount Rushmore of point guards in NBA history. But I'm going to put Isaiah Thomas circling through the NBA in my head. Let's put him on the New York Knicks. I know that sounds strange, but Alfred Payton was not a good point guard for them. They did have Derrick Rose, who had a resurgent season. And you have RJ Barrett, who's good, but not a true point guard. And with Tom Thibodeau coaching, Isaiah Thomas would have a freaking field day with the Knicks, and the Knicks are a team to watch moving forward now with Julius Randle and so many other players on that team. Put Isaiah Thomas in his prime on the Knicks now. Ooh, you'd be cooking up there in New York. Spike Lee would be proud. I tell you that right there in a heartbeat. Rounding it out now to the third and final rapid fire finale question. There is no rationale. There is no reasoning. We're going to cause a stir with this one. And it's the good old fashioned start, bench, cut. Who is in your starting lineup? Who's coming off the bench? And who are you cutting and never want to see again? And the theme of this game, famous Lakers edition.
Ooh.
Yeah, you and I are Lakers fans. This is going to be heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching. People going to be pissed with whatever we choose here. And I'm going to make it a little harder for you on the 3 players that I picked. So hold your breath, and here we go. Start, bench, cut, Lakers edition. And again, no rationale, straight answers. We can debate it later. Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal.
I see you guys start Kobe. I mean, that's a given. Who would I cut and who would I bench? That's where I'm stuck. I would probably stick with Shaq on bench. I'd probably cut Magic. That's where I'm at right now. But that order can change except for Kobe between Shaq and Magic. But I think that's where I'm at right now.
How is it we have come full circle in 2 podcasts? We were simultaneously having the same brain when talking about MLB. We were separate when talking about our starting 5 currently in bench players. And we round out thinking the exact same way in the start, bench, cut edition of Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, Kobe is my starter. And as you said, how can you choose between Shaq and Magic? Because they're 2 completely different players. Shaq, the most dominant. Magic, the greatest assist man I think the game has ever seen, truthfully. I'm in agreement with you. Start Kobe, bench, bring Shaq in off the bench, and cut Magic Johnson. Whew. Okay, I got that one over with. I was sweating for a minute. Okay, I think as I look out, and Lakers fans are dissipating, and I will survive the night. Oh yeah, that's right. But with that being the third and final rapid fire finale question of this episode of the Sports Mile Podcast with your host Dominick Lorenz. That is it. NBA Finals Game 5 is on Friday on ABC. Bucks, Suns in Phoenix. We already know there will be a Game 6 in Milwaukee at the beginning of next week. I think it's either Sunday or Monday, depending on the travel schedule. So we got at least 2 more NBA games this season at minimum before we get to the offseason buzz. We get to see what the Lakers put together for next season to try to reclaim championship glory and get number 18 in the rafters at Staples Center. And I also like to give a big shout out and big thank you to my buddy Alex Lustig for coming on not 1, but 2 podcasts within a 72-hour period. This has been great. It's always fun talking sports with you, man. If it's MLB, if it's NBA, if it's NHL, if it's the NFL, who cares? We talk sports and we have a good time about it anyways. But until next time, I'm your host, Dominick Lorenz, and we'll see you all soon. Keep watching sports, keep having fun, enjoy the rest of summer, and cheers for now.